Well, good evening again, everybody. Welcome to the H2O team call, and we're going to talk about Dream Again. This is a great series for me. This is Lynn Gardner. I'm glad to be the host for the call. And, it's funny how things work out. I just saw this course, and I knew that I was going to take it for myself, and I just thought, maybe I would just, bring forth the message as best I can to everybody on the call. So I'm really, really enjoying it. But I really don't have any team announcements this week for our guests. You don't have to put up with all that. We do have a luncheon coming up here next month, but I'll talk about that as we move forward. And I'm not sure, this is a 12-week course. I'm not sure, how long we're going to go with it. We'll go at least until the Memorial Day weekend, the Monday before. We will not have one Memorial Day weekend, so watch for announcements. And if we've kind of gotten through the meat of the program by then, we'll call it a day. And if not, we'll start back up after Memorial Day. Well, last week we were looking at our dreams in general. We talked about how so many people quit. They give up on their dream. A lot of people will say people give up just before, the victory comes. But we give up on their dream, and mostly because we have unrealistic expectations. Somehow people think, well, I've got this big dream. I'm going to chase this big dream with everything I've got. And they forget that they're also going to have life to contend with, right? And so when life still exists and life is always there, reality is always there, but when it's there in the midst of the big dream, they start to get discouraged because they had unrealistic expectations. They didn't understand there's a process that we all have to go through, and not every dream happens in 20 minutes. Sometimes it's a longer process, but we have to have get our expectations in check, or we'll get discouraged. So we talked about how reality can build a wedge, really between that dream and your life, or your reality, if you will, and we have to go through it, with those unrealistic expectations, we're going to have it hindered, right? In other words, we need to be realistic about the things that can hinder our accomplishments so that we don't stumble in the process. I think everybody could relate to this because I know I've certainly have, gone through these processes myself and have to get myself back in check. And the first thing that can happen to us is disappointment. And, of course, disappointment means failure to meet expectations. So, again, we're getting all revved up. We've got this dream. We're running with it. We've got our why in place and our vision board and all that stuff going on. But it didn't happen, as quickly as we thought it would. So the first thing, we get disappointment because we failed to meet our own expectations, right? We're not on a time scale here, but we have to get that in check. Second thing that can happen, if we don't, again, understand that life is still there, we go from disappointment to discouragement. And, of course, discouragement is discouraged, which means, we start feeling fear. We lack the courage, so we're starting to waver a little bit. First we got disappointed, then we're wavering around, and we don't have the same courage we had when we first, had that dream going. And then the next step, if we don't get things in check, is disillusionment. And, I knew I couldn't do this, or, nobody can sell these things, nobody's going to buy these things. All right, we get disillusioned about that dream in general. And then lastly, if we don't do something, we hit despair. And with despair is when we quit and we get depressed and we go looking for other things, and we're like little mice scattered all around. So we go from disappointment, discouragement, delusionment, and then despair. Unchecked, we will all quit. None of us will ever fulfill our dream if we don't understand that we have to have realistic expectations. Now, on to this week. I think it's very interesting as we're pondering all this. When I thought about this, I thought, with our children, when our children are young, we encourage them to dream, right? I mean, when they say, what do you want to be when you grow up? We ask them all, and they all have an answer. Now, it may not be what they fulfill eventually in their life, but they're all dreaming, and we're encouraging them to dream. We identify with their interests, or at least we try to, and we try to, see what their passion is when they're very, very young. But then as they reach high school, if they aren't, if that dream isn't still talked about, if they aren't academically inclined to go in the direction of that dream, we tell them to shut up and grow up, don't we? We tell them it's time to get serious. You got to get good grades. You got to get, a good education, and then wow, you get to get a good job, And that's the way we train them. We start killing the dreams when our children are still young. It's that way when you think about you've been taught, if you've been taught that way, if you thought that way, if you were told that, if you're stuck in that kind of, mentality that you just have to be a grown-up and stop dreaming and get a job, then you might need a whole paradigm shift in your thinking. So this study has certainly opened my eyes in many, many ways. And I think maybe one reason I was drawn to take the course in the first place and to pay it forward to you is that I've had to learn to feed my dream. I didn't dream as a child. I didn't. I had no dreams. I didn't dream about growing up and being beautiful and getting married and doing any of these things. I didn't have a dream, none. Unless you count dreaming of survival, that is. I guess I could put that on the list. So I didn't know how to dream. So I've had to do a whole lot of work on me, and I've had to really educate myself and get serious about working against my subconscious to break through some pretty serious barriers that I've had in my own life. I'm learning to dream. So maybe that's why I was, drawn to this. But even more so with this study, I understand the significance of my dream, and pieces are already coming into play for me. Sometimes we have gifts and talents, and when we're working within that, our gifts and talents, it kind of helps with the fulfillment of that dream, right? And I know for me, I'm working inside my gifts and talents just by doing this, right? And so it's interesting to see this whole process. But I know that all of us have dreams. You have a dream, okay? You may not be able to pull it to your conscious mind. You may be afraid to talk about it. You may have buried it so deep you got to go dig it up. It may be hidden in the cobwebs of your mind, but we all have a dream. And it's that dream within you that motivates you forward. And in our world, it's that dream that will motivate us to success, right? It's that dream and that why. It's the passion that pushes us. And it's not necessarily all those little individual efforts, but the passion behind the dream and the fact that the dream has a purpose. Again, I'm working inside of those gifts for me, right? I'm working toward my dream. There's no doubt about it. But, it's not necessarily all these little individual efforts, but the fact that I'm working where I'm supposed to be working. Many of us have identified our why for our business. And no doubt, we're in business. This is not a mission, although we are on a mission in many ways. We're in business, and we've got to find that balance and figure these things out logically with our mind. But you'll find that in this business, when we all come up with a why, we try to drive people crazy. What is your why? Why are you doing this? What is your dream, in other words, right? Well, you'll find that, all those income goals that we have are directly tied to the dream. I don't hear anybody saying, well, I just want to get loads of money, and then I'm going to squander it away and buy houses and cars and yachts. That's not what we hear. Money is a conduit to get us to the fulfillment of the dreams that are hidden within so many of us. So for instance, with me, my why is pretty simple. My why is to produce an abundance that will pay off my house. Not so that I can strut around and brag about my house being paid off, and certainly not so that I can retire, because I don't think any of us were ever, born to retire, but because that represents freedom to me. See, I don't want to owe anybody anything. And it's not freedom to quit working, but it's freedom to work like I've never worked before. My dream is alive, and your dream is alive too. It has a destiny tied to it. It's unique to you. My dream and your dream are two. Nobody has the same dream. Not any human being has the same dream, right? Maybe some of it threads together and it looks a little similar, but it's not. It's unique to you. Your dream won't motivate me, and my dream won't motivate you. But the real question that we have as we embark on all this is, will we risk getting into the spirituality of that dream? You see, that dream that you have is tied to your heart. You're the only one in the entire universe that can live out your dream. And since you didn't make the dream and you didn't force that into your very being, into your heart, where are you going to look to give credit for the source of that dream? See, it's not until we can really face the truth about that, where that dream comes from, that we can be set free. And really, it's called reframing. We got to rethink this whole thing. It's not that, I used to have dreams and I didn't, and that was just dreaming. I was just a dreamer, and we put it aside and we bury it so deep. We need to be reframing the way we think about it. Again, we need a paradigm shift in the way we think about that. And, of course, a paradigm shift is when we see things a certain way, life a certain way, and then we learn something that we never knew before, and suddenly, boom, we see things in a totally different way. The lights come on. That's when we have an aha moment. Again, you didn't make your dream. You discovered your dream. It was within you all along. And until you're willing to face the truth, you have a massive misconception that will hinder you for the rest of your life. I don't know about you, but when I end this day or in this life, whenever that is, I just hope I have fulfilled what I was born to fulfill, right? But because you're looking at your dream from the wrong side, like you're looking at it from the outside, or maybe you buried it deep because on this side of the dream it looks too big. You have all these lies that go through your head that you can't accomplish that dream. You're looking at the dream from the wrong side. Until you can look at the dream on the other side of the dream, you can't fulfill the dream, right? Because all the things get in your way. The person behind your dream is you. So until you're willing to follow that root system, if you will, and discover who put the dream there in the first place and why was it put there, you're going to be wandering around in the wilderness, and I don't want to be wandering around in the wilderness. But, it's really fascinating to me. Obviously I'm a person of faith, and, I think it's so interesting how you can read certain scripture in the Bible over and over and over, and then all of a sudden, the lights go on, and you see it, meaning behind the scripture you never saw before. But in this study, Bruce Wilkinson brought out passages, and you might want to write them down because you might want to do a little homework of your own. But he brought out Luke 19:11 through 13. And, it's a parable that really not many people speak of. It's the story of the minas. And so I'm going to read it very briefly to you, and then I'm going to go into what he shared with me, and then we'll take it from there. And it says, while they were listening to this, he went on to tell them a parable, because he was near Jerusalem, and the people thought that the kingdom of God was going to appear at once. In other words, they were waiting for the second coming. Like some of us are begging for it now, right? But they were waiting for it. And he said, a man of noble birth, which would be him, right? A man of noble birth went to a distant country to have himself appointed king and then to return. So he's talking about, I'm going to a distant country and then I'm going to come back. And so he called 10 of his servants and gave them 10 minas. Now, minas is money. It's a tangible money, right? And he said, put this money to work until I come back. How interesting is that it's not talking about just putting yourself to work, just live for me, just spread the gospel, do these things. He said, put this money to work. Again, not many people speak of this parable. So again, they thought that the kingdom was coming very quickly. So he was trying to teach them, through a parable, what to do between now and when that happens, right? He told them he was setting up a spiritual kingdom. He wasn't setting up the physical. I'm going to go set up the spiritual. So what are we supposed to do between the first and the second coming? Maybe all of us ponder that, right? That question still remains today. But what are we supposed to be doing? Well, if you look at, again, verse 12, nobleman, again, that's him, and the far country is heaven, and he's going to receive that into himself. And in 13, he talks about delivering 10 minas. Basically he's saying, you go do business till I come back. Life is still going to go on. We can't just sit here on a spiritual high and never do the practical steps that it takes to do this life. But he's commanding them, go do business till I come back. He wanted his servants to make money for the kingdom. And, the reason he brought this parable up is back in that time, in the biblical time, if an estate owner was going to travel far and wide, then he would leave money with, for his estate to be managed in his absence. And so what happens, Jesus gives us each one a mina, and they all got the same amount. And then he says, do business with my money, and basically say, make it grow. And he doesn't care how you do it. Make money, that's his. It all belongs to him, right? So he's saying, make money with my money and what I've given unto you until I come back. So obviously he wouldn't give them money after he's gone, right? He's saying to them, I've given you a life. While I'm gone, you need to live that life. And you need to do everything you can to produce as much as you can. Now, it's not just money, of course, but there is a monetary lesson here. And you know what? He's going to want to know what we did with it. So he says, I command you to do this business for me. Not suggesting that you do it. He's not going to do it for you. I mean, you can pray all you want to, folks, and I guess miracles happen all the time. He rained manna from heaven. He rained food down for his people. But, he expects us to get off our duff and be working, right? So, he's saying, take yourself. You are your greatest asset. You've been created in the image of God. There's nothing that we can't do if we think we can do it, right? So, everything, if you look at our world, and as Christians, it's hard sometimes because, again, we like to go to spiritual la-la land, I call it, right? And we don't want to think about it. But if you look at, no matter where you are in your home or your office right now, everything around you was developed or made by somebody. right? It didn't just happen. God didn't just say, oh, here's a cell phone or here's a car. It didn't happen. People had a dream, and they ran with their dream, and they decided to produce it. Everything you see around you was made by somebody else. It wasn't God who made those things. He expects us to get out and work. Therefore, he doesn't tell you what to do with you, but he does say, while I'm gone, you take you and maximize what I've done on this earth. And so the question that probably all of us should ask ourselves is, what did we do for him in this past week? Now, a lot of people might say, well, I went to church, went to Bible study, and I did, but those things that you didn't do for him, okay? The people serving, the teachers of the Bible study, the pastors of the church, or the praise team in the church, or whatever, they were doing things for him, but what did you do for him in this past week? How are you going to multiply and do these things, right, if you're not doing anything? So what did you do? Or what, it's not what you wanted to do. It's not all about what you want to do. It's not even what you thought you should do. But what did you do with you that he wanted to be done, even just last week? What about next week? Is anything going to change? We all have three things. Everybody's got them. Well, first of all, we were all made in his image, right? But we all have the same three things. We all have time. Now, we don't know how much time we have before we're called home. And that presses me a little bit to be sure I do all that I can do, right? We don't know how much time, but we're all given the same 24 hours in a day. We all have the same amount of time. And it's your time that you have to choose how you're going to use. And we all have talent, right? We have gifts. We have a responsibility to grow and to maximize our talents and gifts that were given to us. Everybody's got them. I get so tired. People say, well, I don't know how to do anything. I'm not good at anything. First of all, shame on you if you're a Christian and you say that, because you know that God's given us the gifts and talents to every human being. Of course you have gifts and talents. And it's your responsibility to grow them and maximize them because they were given to you. As for me, again, there's a whole lot more in life that I'm bad at than what I'm good at. But one of the things that I hear, if you ever, compliment me on a call or a training, you'll see, if you were in my presence, you'd see me blush because it's not me. I know I'm working in my gifts and talents, and whenever you're working in the gifts and talents that God gives you, you shine. It's not me. It's that I'm working within my gifts and talents. And I know that all of the things that I do are leading to that dream. And there people will say, oh, if she'd only put so much work into, going out and doing this and going out and doing that, there's no end to it. Listen, there's no end to where I'm going to be because I'm working my dream and I'm using my gifts and talents. All of you have gifts and talents. And lastly, we all have treasure. We have money. All of us on this call have money, at least a little bit of money, okay? What are we doing with our money? So this past week, how much money did you use doing business for the King? He says, I want you to do business till I come. How much money did that mean? He didn't say, I'm going to do business for you. Sit back and pray like a maniac and it'll all just show up. He didn't say that. He said, you get out and do business till I come back. And he didn't say, I'll just do business in you. He does a lot of business in us, but when it comes to producing monetary things, he's not doing it in us. We actually have to get out and do the business. So, when you look at the lesson of the minas and you look at, how much was in return, some of us do a little bit of business, some of us do a lot of business. But when he returned from heaven, he commands those 10 who he had given the money to, the minas that we read in Luke 19, he commands them to give an account for what happened while he was gone. What happened to it? And, of course, some produced 10 times what they were given, and some 5 times what they were given, and some just had what he left with. They really didn't do anything, right? I hope that you're not going to be okay with that you just don't do anything. God cares about the how much. And he says, while I'm gone, take your life and produce a lot. And, guys, it's all coming down to the dream. Everybody has the freedom to do whatever they want to do with their time. It's all free will. You can squander it. You can go to the beach every day. You can do whatever. It's your time. It's your life. You do whatever. You can do whatever you want. But what will you be giving me when I come back is what he's going to ask. So you have your whole life to produce a whole lot. Verse 16 says, second coming, your mina, again, has earned 10 times. If we get out and do our business and we're working within that dream, we have the ability to do that, to grow our minas 10 times. Why? Because we can. Because we all have time, we all have talent, we all have treasure. So each of us should be looking at whatever gift that we've received. I'm going into Scripture here. So 1 Peter 4:10 says, each of you should use whatever gift you received to serve others. Listen to that. Whatever gift you received. Not if you received a gift. Each of us should use whatever gift you've received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms. So everybody's got a gift, and it comes in all kinds of shapes and sizes. So what gift or what talent are we talking about? It's not just service, like ministry and missions and feeding the hungry. That's not what this is. Each of you should use whatever gift you receive to serve others in various forms. So what does various forms mean? Well, what does all that mean? It means we need to be getting to work, okay, in every aspect of our lives. But there are some questions here. I hope you have pen or paper to write down, because there are some, exercises that we go through in this study that help bring, it's kind of crazy how it helps bring to light what your dream is. Because you may have forgotten your dream. You may even have a why out there for our business, and you think you're chasing that, but, you still have a bigger dream behind the why, right? And mine was a good example, okay? I'm out there working my talents and my gifts, and I'm chasing a dream. It's all coming together for good. So the first question that we have is, what are your talents? And you should list them out. And I just want to say that, when you list out talents, it's not like, I was a good mom. What made you a good mom? In other words, list out your talents, your gifts. For me, just give you an example, I put down, communication, speaking and writing, motivation, that kind of thing. I put that down. And the ability to be heard, put that down. So put down whatever your talents are. It really doesn't matter, guys. It's like if you're a good cook, put down you're a good cook. If you're a good, compassionate friend, and put that down. What are your talents? Everybody's got them, so you better find them and write them down. Second one is, take some time to assess the treasures that God has given you. What are your treasures? I don't know anybody on this call that's homeless and helpless, okay? Everybody's got something. So take time to assess the treasures that God has given you. What are your treasures in this life? And think about them, right? The third would be to read Luke 19:11 through 13 again. Read it again on your own time. Luke 19:11 through 13. First part of that would be, the question is, what do you think? What do you think? Not what I'm bringing forth from what is taught here, but what you think the master intended when he asked them to, quote unquote, engage in business until he returned. You come up with your own answer for that. What do you think the master intended when he asked them to do that? Second part of that is, consider something here for a minute. This was an aha moment for me. Consider that your boss, you work for somebody else, and the boss says, you know what, I'm gonna just go on sabbatical for a couple of years here, okay, and I'm gonna turn it all over to you. What would you do with it? Would you want to try to turn a profit and make it even greater than it was when it was given over to you? Or would you be happy just to kind of sit there as long as you don't lose money and come back and business is still there? Is that where you would be? So consider that, and then write down, what would your thought be? Would you be okay to sit there? Would you want to build it into something bigger, try to make a profit? And if you answered that you would want to, turn a profit, why is that so? Write down why, right? Why would you want to turn a profit for your boss? And then fourth is based on Colossians 3:23. Bear with me, I'll read it to you here so you don't have to look it up, which says, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord and not for human masters. When we think about that scripture, whatever you do, and this is like our life, okay, this is our business and our life and our means to make money. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord and not for human masters. Do you do that for your business? Do you really serve with excellence and do everything as if you're doing it for Him? Because you know what, folks? It's all for Him. So are you doing that? So consider Colossians 3:23, And in what way does God want you to steward your resources? So answer that question. Based on that scripture, Colossians 3:23, what way does God want you to steward your resources? Next question is read 1 Corinthians 4:2. 1 Corinthians 4:2, which I'll read to you right now just so that we have a basis point. Now it is required that those who have been given a trust must prove faithful. What does that mean to you? You're given a trust. What do you think you've been given here? You've been given a trust, right? So consider that scripture, 1 Corinthians 4:2. What does it mean to be found trustworthy and faithful? What does that mean? The second part of that is how does this relate to what you listed in your answers to question 1 and 2, which again, what are your talents and what are your treasures? And so you're tying it all in together. I think you're going to have an aha moment when you get through with this just the way I did. So how does it relate to what you listed in 1 and 2? And then we're encouraged to, again, memorize 1 Peter 4:10. And 1 Peter 4:10, I've lost it here, and I'll find it for you just in a second. I have it written down for you. But 1 Peter 4:10. And then we, look at our responsibility for our dream. And how do these things link up? How do they correlate, right? So I thought it was fascinating because one of the things that this caused me to think about was I was thinking about my own journey. And, again, I was a child who didn't dream. So I kind of started at my young adulthood. I was kind of thinking about my life. And when I was probably in my early 20s, I said that I'd really like to go to law school. If you ask me why I wanted to go to law school, I didn't think about earning the big bucks. I didn't really worry about earning big bucks, to be honest with you. I knew I would, so I didn't really think about that. I wouldn't have said, I just want to memorize all that law and I want to go prosecute the bad guys. You know what I thought about? I thought about how I would love to be in a courtroom. I'd love to be up there defending innocent people. I'd love to be heard for these people, be a voice for these people, right? Isn't that interesting? And so then when I went into my first career, I was in business development in the defense industry, and a big part of what I had to do was communicate with the customers, right? There would be a request for proposal coming down the pike somewhere, and so I was out there in the field communicating with the customer to see what are we going to need to speak to be considered. If we write this proposal, we've got to speak to the needs. So I was out there finding out the needs and then converting that to the proposal writers, right? So look at that. I'm still using the same gifts are coming out. And then I went into, to be an auctioneer. And you may not understand, but 99.99% of the auction business is really about marketing. I mean, if you don't have anybody there, you got nobody to sell it to, right? And so a big part of what I did was I got out and I spoke it up. I did press releases. I went to, areas and I spoke about the auction process. I used my communication to stir that field up and look at here where I am today. Now, again, I've heard from people even very close in my circle say, what are you doing? If you put all that energy into doing something else, if you just get out and did 10 demos a day instead of doing training calls or whatever, I hear this criticism all the time, but you know what? It rolls right off my back because I know that the bounty that's coming because of my dream and because I'm working within the gifts and talents to fulfill that dream are immeasurable. My mind cannot even comprehend. And so it's been an interesting journey for me. I hope that you guys can look at your own lives and look at some of these things that Bruce Wilkinson calls attention to get us to have that paradigm shift in the way we think about our dreams. You do have a dream. I shared last week about how he asked that question, how you do in living your dream. And he asked the question of this woman just out in public. The bottom line is, she had given up her dream. And when he asked her about it, she said, it's too late. It is, until you're dead, it's not too late, okay? But to her, she had gone through all those steps of, from disappointment to discouragement to disillusionment to despair. She gave it up. Well, you know what her dream was? To bake, cupcakes and cookies. She loved to do that. There's not a dream. It's a good dream or a bad dream. There's not a talent. It's a good talent or a bad talent, or one is better than the other. It doesn't matter. See, it could very well be that she's supposed to fulfill that dream and become the next Mrs. Fields and be able to fund the kingdom. You see what I'm saying? It all comes together for his good. So you got a dream somewhere. I don't know where it is or what it is. But if you can't bring it to your mind and to your heart, you need to start digging and say, I used to think I wanted to do this because when we figure this out And when we figure out the dream and the gifts and the talents and the treasures and all those things wrapped together, and we get on that dream path, it's a game changer. And if we don't, we'll never be fulfilled in this life because God put that dream in there for a reason. And we are supposed to produce money. Where would the kingdom be without money? So when you look at what did I do this week for the Lord, what did I do last week for Him? You don't count going to church, going to Bible study, guys. Okay. And if you look at what did I spend, you might be looking at yourself saying, well, I don't have anything to spend. Well, isn't that what we're talking about? Getting out there and working with excellence with your dream. So on that note, *6, guys, you can come on to the line anytime. If you have any questions, comments, anything you'd like to add or take away from this study time, *6, I'd love to hear from you. Anybody out there?
Lynn, it's Jack here.
Hey, Jack.
Hey, Lynn, it's more of a story that's happened to me the last 2 or 3 weeks. I've been working with a family, and they are really struggling financially. And they come from Somalia. They're American citizens, but really struggling. Anyway, so they've gone through the disappointment phase. They've lost courage. They're disillusioned. They basically got into the phase of hopelessness. And so I've been spending, in the last 3 weeks, I've spent 25 hours with them. And people might think, well, that's crazy. Why would you want to go and invest? So tonight, the project that we're working on, our business project, he said, we just cannot find the money. As much as I want to start this, you really give me hope again, but we just cannot find the money. So I asked him 2 questions. I said, do you have any idea why I've spent 25 hours investing in you in the last 3 weeks? They said, well, I guess to educate me about the business. I said, no, it's not that. I said, it's because I believe in you. And I think we've come to a stage where I believe in you more than you believe in yourself. And
that's beautiful.
That struck home. And then I said to him, if money was not a problem to start this project, would you want to join our team? He said, absolutely, I would want to start tomorrow because I can see myself doing this and you've taught me so much. So I said, well, I figured out a way how we could do this together. So we're going to be meeting on Wednesday, and we'll put a plan together. And the bottom line is we've been able to stimulate his hope again, that he has got a vision and that there is a way to reach his vision, and that we've come alongside of him. So often it requires other people to get us up to speed, to help us limp back to where our vision was. Often we aren't able to do it by ourselves, so we need one another to be able to do this.
That is such a wonderful story, Jack, because it's true. And what a privilege for you to have the opportunity to walk them back to a dream. I mean, really, because, there are plenty of people out there, guys, that we encounter that they've lost hope and they don't want it. We can't help them until they're ready, but obviously, what a beautiful thing to kindle that hope and that dream within this family. I thank you for sharing that. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Anybody else? I love that because, we know that our ultimate purpose, why we're here, and we are to be there for each other, and we don't adopt people, and we don't give up on them. But what a beautiful thing, 25 hours, and you have to think about, well, if I was just down and out and I felt hopeless and I didn't think there was any way to turn, what would it mean to me for somebody to give me their heart for 25 hours? It'd mean everything.
Yeah. Now, this is actually a Muslim family, and I have not spent 1 second sharing the gospel with him. But what I have been doing is I've been building trust with him.
Right.
And now he's open to talk.
Exactly.
And I've been helping their family with some food and a few other odds and bits and pieces here and there as well. And they suddenly see, hang on a second, there's something different about this guy. And so they've opened the whole family is like, I've got to go there a few times. They want me to go and eat there. and I've suddenly become a friend of the family. So we will see where the story goes.
That's a beautiful story. I mean, God's planting a lot of seeds, and, it's an honor, I think, for you to be able to be a part of that. It's so cool. I love that. You just made my night. Anybody else? Star 6. Questions, comments, Star 6. Last call before we conclude. Okay, guys, well, I'm going to sign off here. Thank you for tuning in. I really hope, I'm really being blessed by this study, and I hope that there's something in it for you. I trust that there is, and you see the importance that your dreams, you didn't come up with your dream. It was already planted there, and the dream leads to very, very big things. To consider the questions that I put out there for you, that were given to me, and just consider, what you've got the time. Everybody's got some time. I mean, Jack just talked about, he's a busy man, but he's found 25 hours of work to do for somebody for the sake of the kingdom. So, what you have time. Consider what your gifts and your talents are. Everybody's got them. There's no such thing as a good one or a bad one or a big one or a little one, no more than there is a big sin and a little sin. It's all the same. You have gifts and talents. Figure out what they are and think about what your treasures are. It's all going to come together, full circle for you, and I hope it's an encouragement to you as it is for me. So you guys, go make it a great night. I'll see you guys next time. Keep dreaming. Bye-bye.
Good night.